Hi everyone, Matt here from Norfolk Sport. We've got Ben with us today. Looking forward to having a good chat with Ben. The idea of this interview and obviously other interviews that we're doing online and obviously through sort of emailing different companies is to just raise awareness during a tough time, during a lockdown period where businesses might be struggling. So that's the idea. We're going to find more about everything, sort of more about Ben and what his business is and Dereham Town Football Club and his involvement. And he's also a massive Norwich City fan as well. So, we'll get started. So first of all, Ben, we always start off with this question, which is sort of what is your passion and where does that stem from?
I'd say I have two, which is one is football. As you mentioned, I'm a big Norwich City fan, which sometimes I try and forget. And my other one is sort of videography and like graphic design, all that good stuff. Digital is what I'll call it. And where it stemmed from is a great question. Football from my dad. I hold him responsible for all the heartache as a Norwich City fan.
Yeah.
But in terms of sort of media and stuff, it's a bit of a weird one in that when I was at school, so I finished my A-levels a couple of years ago. I picked history and I was in a history lesson and I didn't like it at all. And I thought, instead of leaving sixth form, let's just bin history off. And, where are my mates? What class are they in? And it was media studies. And I was like, all right, miss, can you put me down for media studies? And can I be put in this class with my mates? And thankfully she said yes. Because before that, I genuinely didn't really have much of an interest. And then I sort of got into those lessons, started to enjoy it a bit more. And then when school finished, again, I didn't really have many plans to do anything in the media. And then I was fortunate enough to be presented a big opportunity interviewing my good mate Connor, who works for the Pink and now, interview Stuart Webber, who's obviously Norwich's sporting director. And it all sort of stemmed from there.
Want to chat to you a bit later about that. And that's, so I guess your dad's a Norwich fan, is he?
He is, yeah. I think his mum was as well. To my nan, and she was a massive Norwich fan, and he lived in Heatherset, and I remember he said that he's a bit of like I don't know if he'll ever watch this or not, but he'll help me for saying it, but I think he's a bit of a Man United fan as well, because down in Heatherset at the park one day, I don't know why they were training there, but Man United were playing Norwich, and he had Fergie and the boys were training on the park near him. So I think from there that sort of ignited his interest in football. And he was a far better footballer than what I was. You go upstairs and you've got all of his trophies in the boxes. And then you've got my trophies, which is just a few participation trophies. But no, yeah, he's a massive Norwich fan. And I think we started going 2007. I think we went, was my first season. So I've been going for quite some time. I think I've seen everything as a Norwich fan, bar European football. So it's been, it's been quite some journey.
You weren't alive in the days of Jeremy Goss. That was no. Yonks ago. That was yonks ago.
It was yeah. Do you know what? I've met him though, and he's such a lovely guy. And honestly, it's so nice to sort of see the passion he still has for Norwich. But yeah, I can only sort of look at YouTube and stuff for that.
Yeah. He was actually teaching at a school. I didn't realise. I sort of went into the school, and then the school told me, Jeremy Goss is in, and I'm like, what? Like the Jeremy Goss? Ex-Norwich player. They're like, yeah, he's coming in. He's like doing a talk with the children. So that was great. That was brilliant for me. That was a really good insight. And he's, I don't know if you found, but he's so grounded, and he's
it's ridiculous, yeah.
So sort of like that come across. He had loads of time. Well, he had time for everybody. Just wondering sort of how you're dealing with lockdown and what that looks like for you.
Just quite boring, to be honest with you. I started off as a key worker because I used to work at Sainsbury's. So for a month, in April, I was working there, and I planned to stop before the lockdown, and I'd handed my notice in and everything. So the lockdown was then enforced, and then I was sort of jobless, and it's a bit like, we have to rely on my other incomes now, which has been fine. Nearly a year on, we're fine. But it's been a lot of nothingness, to be honest with you. All the work that I've done is all on the computer, stuff I can just do at home. There's been a couple of times where I've been out on a couple of jobs, but in general, it's just been quite sort of sitting around, trying my best. And it's a very difficult thing to do. It's very difficult to drive a business sort of from home, isn't it? When your bread and butter is going out and meeting people at sort of conventions and stuff. But yeah, it's been okay. I've been healthy as well. It's been an interesting one, to say the least, and I'll be so glad once I can sort of go out and see my friends again.
Oh, I know, I can't wait. Boris is set for the announcement on I think it's the 22nd, isn't it, Feb? So
Mhm.
somewhere, I think it's the 22nd. So hopefully,
I haven't got a clue, mate.
yeah, hopefully he gives us some good news in a couple of weeks' time. Fingers crossed. Fingers crossed. So you just said about the business and going to like different conventions and things. I guess that's how you, because you've got your own business, which is Reverb Digital. That's right, isn't it?
Reverb Digital, yeah.
Yeah, and you can find all on social media. You got a Facebook page and Twitter, Instagram.
Yeah, we're on Twitter and Instagram. I mean, we haven't put too much on there because I think there's been quite a sort of lengthy gap between posts because, you know, there's not much you can really post, especially when the majority of your work is sort of podcast editing and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But yeah, you just type that in on the internet and I'm sure you'll find us.
I'm going to take you back to the 31st of January, 2019. What do you think's significant about that? You've got it. He knows it.
Yeah, this is a day that I bang on about at least once a year. This is honestly like I get so much grief for bringing this up all the time, but that was a day, wasn't it, where I went and met Stuart Webber for the interview at Colney, and oh my god, what a day! And you know, it's put a smile on my face you bringing that up, but no, yeah, it was absolutely incredible. Yeah.
What was your how did that link come up? How did you, how did you get that link initially or that opportunity to go there?
So, I mean, I hadn't done much, you know, I'd done literally nothing. So I'd finished sixth form the previous May. And in sort of in that gap between the May and the January, I'd done nothing. I was working at Sainsbury's and I was just sort of living, I was just sort of existing. I wasn't really doing much. And my best mate, Connor, who, as I mentioned earlier, he's a reporter for the Pinker now as a result of sort of that journey. He was a writer and he had his sort of fingers in a lot of pies. And one of those pies was My Football Writer, who are a Norwich City website. And there's a great guy there called Gary Gowers. And I don't know how it came about, but I know that the two sort of press officers, I'm not sure that's their titles or not, but they said to Gary, you know, Stuart Webber wants to do an interview because quite clearly Stuart Webber is a clever guy. And at that point in Norwich's season, we were playing really well, weren't we? And it was like, if we can sort of capitalize on this and make the fans sort of really happy and give them what they want, you know, brilliant. And they said, do you want to have someone from MFW come down and interview him? And I think the initial thought was that it would be written, but no. Stuart Webber was like, apparently anyway, Webber suggested that it was filmed. And Connor knew that I liked, you know, I had a bit of knowledge on cameras and stuff, and I was quite interested in it. And, you know, Connor's like that. He's always thinking of others, and he was trying to sort of help me get on my way. And he said, do you want to, you know, record me interview Stuart Webber? And I was like, oh, no, I can't do that. Because, like, genuinely, I'm one of those sort of Norwich fans where you're just sort of scared of anything. You see a footballer in the street, you get butterflies in the stomach.
Right, okay.
Thankfully, I'm not like that anymore because, you know, I'm an adult now.
Yeah, of course,
but I said no to him. And he was like, yeah, come on. And then eventually he talked me into it. And I was like, it was probably like nervy. He was at the UEA at the time, so we had to go down to the UEA and borrow a bunch of equipment, really expensive equipment, which we often sort of paraded about, pretending it was our own. But it was such a weird day because we went to Colney. We got there for a start, and first of all, that was before sort of the transformation of Colney. And we got there, we sort of sat in the cafe, and the players started coming in and eating their lunch, and I was just sort of sat there like, what on earth is going on at this point? I don't know what I'm doing here. And then Stuart Webber comes out, who at this point I already just absolutely love because, you know, he came to Norwich, he was so open and honest. He sort of brought in loads of players who were really good. These players who were literally sat around me. And he's like, "You're right, I'm Stuart." And I was like, "Yeah, I know who you are." I obviously didn't say that, but in my head, I'm like, "Okay, this is ridiculous." And he showed us to his office. We went and sat in his office. I remember seeing Neil Adams' appraisal on his desk, which was then swiftly removed out of sight, which was quite funny. But yeah, it was such a bizarre day, and I remember it's just kind of a funny story, a bit of egg on my face in the situation. But I'd set the cameras up. And Webber was like, I said to him, where do you want me to stand? So I'm not like interfering with anything because I hadn't done this before. So I didn't sort of comprehend the fact that I could just stand at the camera and no one would really care. So he's like, oh, you go sit at my desk if you want. And when Stuart Webber says, you can go sit at my desk, that's where you're going to go and sit. Until I realized that it was in the shot of Connor. So if you were to go back and watch that interview, you'd see me sat in the chair, just so like lost and confused. Like this is dumbfounded, I think is probably the right word for it. People say I looked bored, but I was just looking around in his office because he had all this stuff up on his walls.
That sounds like you were bored.
Oh, mate, I was genuinely. And there was the whiteboard and it had all the players on it and stuff, and like who was staying, who was going, because we did it on deadline day. So obviously it was
Incredible, isn't it? What an experience.
It was ridiculous, honestly.
Yeah.
And I just sort of sat there, and there was a point where I had to intervene because I had to switch the cards and the cameras, and I was like, I don't want to do that because I don't want you to stop talking. And then he ran over. I must have been about 20 minutes in the time we were given. He was like, I'm late for a meeting, but you know, I enjoyed it. And
Right.
then we left, and I was like, this is ridiculous. And it was, honestly, it was, you know, it would take some doing to beat that day, but genuinely, it was proper class. Yeah.
I think he's got a real way with his interviews and how he talks. I listened to him recently, and how he gives his vision and what he's going to do and how he's going to do it. He's making everybody really confident that players are going to stay. And also players are going to get, like, if Norwich City are going to sell, they're going to sell for good money, you know?
Yeah.
So, Dereham, haven't you? I saw the interview that you had with Ash, and there was the ex, or is he something to do with the finance at Norwich?
He was. So he was the finance director at Norwich, but he's not anymore. He does it somewhere else, which I've completely forgotten where. But he's now the treasurer at Dereham.
Right.
But he's a lovely guy.
Yeah, I saw. So you've been busy doing that with, you know, releasing different sort of interviews and things. Was that was your first interview? Have you got some more to come? Is that right?
So that wasn't actually me. That was Connor who interviewed, because Connor is like stupidly good at interviewing. So I was like, if you want to help out, honestly, you just do it. But that's the sort of the relaunch of our club podcast, which I've sort of I don't know sort of where it really came from, but I got the bug back, the football bug, got it back because fingers crossed we should be able to start next season as normal. So I sort of got it back in the groove a bit and got these sort of ideas flowing and stuff. But yeah, the club podcast should be really good. We tried it August 2019, I think it was. And then Connor got his job, so he then had to stop. So we just sort of left it alone. But now that everyone's sort of got a grip on reality again, we can start doing that again. But yeah, no, Dereham is honestly, I absolutely love that to pieces, love that club to pieces. But yeah, again, it was another accident in terms of how it happened. But honestly, I love that club. Yeah.
Just going back to the club podcast, do you just focus on Dereham Town Football Club, or is the idea to focus on other clubs as well? I'm not too sure how it works.
So it's called Magpie Tales. So realistically, we're going to sort of stay within the Dereham sphere, but we do sort of broaden beyond Dereham in terms of like Norfolk football in general. Like, for example, I know we want Nick Bowler to come on at some point, and that guy is just an absolute whiz when it comes to Norfolk football. So we'll have him on.
So much knowledge.
Yeah, honestly, it's ridiculous. I don't know how sort of he stores it all in his head. But yeah, we're going to try and sort of take a broader point of view from Norfolk football, but it's very much sort of for the fans. And I think in times like this, I want to keep sort of our loyal fans rewarded for sticking with us. Because I didn't realize how sort of big Dereham were in terms of their following. But they've got some really loyal fans, and sort of we can do anything, and they'll just love it. Which is good for us and good for them, because for us it gives us something to do, and for them it just sort of it gives them something to do, and it gives them a club to follow in times where we aren't going to see football at Aldous Park until July, August. So we've got to do our best to sort of serve them.
Yeah, well, when I was at the club, I can only speak highly of the fans and the following. You know, we'd be going to places in the middle of London, and you know, the guys would be and the girls would be on the minibus, and you know, they'd be supporting the team all the time. So I can't speak sort of highly enough of the following. And I think following of Norfolk clubs in general, you look at Wroxham, their FA Cup run that they went on, through to Fakenham with their run. I know that Swaffham, when they're on a run or they're doing well in the leagues, you know, the crowds are good. It is all the way through Wales and, you know, across the whole of Norfolk. I think that the fan base on a whole is really good. And I think there's a lot of potential to grow it as well, to be honest, if it's done in the right way. But the foundations that are laid at the moment is, you know, I think it's really good. You were massively involved with the editing and filming of the documentary that went out last year.
Yeah, so like I remember at school and stuff with Connor. I keep mentioning Connor. I need to stop. We always want to do like a non-league football documentary because grassroots football is so important, and we didn't feel like there was enough of a spotlight on it. So that was always a sort of a pipeline dream. I no idea how we ever planned on making it happen, but luckily Ash Bunn, the chairman now, got in contact with Connor and was like, "Do you want to help us do something for the club?" And Connor was like, "Yeah." And he said, "Can my mate Ben come along and help out?" Because at that point, I had decided that I sort of wanted to do filming and editing and stuff like that. And then we started that. I think the conversation must have sort of began in June, early June, and then we started filming beginning of July. We went to sort of the signing on day where the players sign their contracts or whatever and do all their fitness before the season. And we did that. And so there's a player called Jake Imran. I don't know if you remember this, but he turned up in his Porto shirt.
Yeah, yeah.
And there was a Porto fan called Ellis, Away Days on YouTube. He's got like 100,000 subscribers, and he's from Norwich, I believe. I know he's from Norfolk at least. And he shared that, and he already had a sort of connection with the Porto fans because he'd done some stuff with the official club and stuff like that, which is mental for him. And he shared it, and it ended up in Portuguese like media, and it was on the TV in Portugal. I could not tell you why. It was the first day of filming, and I remember I was in the car with Rob, who we were also doing the documentary with, and we were just getting these tweets sent to us, and it was absolutely ridiculous. I remember sort of the little interview we did with him, which is what went. I don't think you can call it viral, but what went to Portugal
Yeah.
ended up with 100,000 views, and it was like, I don't understand why. And in retrospect, it created this bond between Dereham and Porto fans who still engage with our stuff now. They still love it now. Like if we tweet out anything to do with Porto, we'll get a couple hundred likes and then 50 replies because they just absolutely love it. But yeah, no, it all stemmed from that documentary. We hadn't planned to be part of a media team, but it just sort of ended up happening. And I'm glad it did because there was that transition in power between the chairman to Ash now, and he was like, "Do you want to do it? Do you fancy it?" And I was like, "Yeah, I really do," because Norwich were doing pretty terribly at the time, so I thought I'm not going to miss much there, am I? And yeah, we started in November, and yeah, November 2019, and since then it has been an absolute whirlwind. And I like to think that we're putting sort of Norfolk football on the map because our graphic stuff, I like to think anyway, it is quite nice, and I hope that gives Dereham sort of the profile that he genuinely deserves.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. Well, I think the improvement on the social media side and the graphic side, it's been tenfold, hasn't it? It's been great. So hats off to you guys. You're doing a great, good job there. Really good. I got one more. I just want to finish on back to Reverb Digital. I just want to finish on that, and I just want to ask you sort of what your plans are. So lockdown. Imagine it. A lockdown finishes next week, and we're all back to, I say, normality. I know it's not going to be like that, but normality. Sort of what what is your journey, and how do you see your journey, and what direction is that going to go into?
Well, do you know what? If you'd asked me this a few weeks ago, I'd have said sort of we were playing it by ear. But Jordan, who I share the business with, and Rob as well, we've had a lot of discussions about sort of like planning for the future because it's such an important thing to do. And I think we learned before that we hadn't really planned properly. And you can't plan for a pandemic, but that showed in that we were lucky enough that clients were willing to sort of postpone rather than cancel jobs, for example. And we had a couple of stuff planned, a couple of bits planned last summer. That never sort of materialized, obviously, but we agreed to just do it this summer. So we're quite lucky in that regard. But at the moment for us, it's an interesting one, and we've been totally fine. There's never been sort of any doubt as to whether we can carry on, which I'm really grateful for. A lot of companies have obviously gone under and struggled because they've got loads of employees to pay. You've got offices to run. You've got a lot of sort of expenses, whereas our only real expenses is sort of equipment and stuff.
Yeah.
Which there's no sort of, you don't depend on that equipment to be able to do jobs. It's just about improving. So we've been able to function perfectly. But in terms of planning for the future, It's a difficult one, to be honest with you. We've had many conversations about what we can do. We have got a plan in place, like a specific plan, which I won't tell you about because that'll take about an hour. But in terms of that, it's just about getting ourselves out there, and as soon as we can, ideally, just sort of physically going and seeing people, because that's where that's your bread and butter, isn't it? The best way to speak to someone is by actually going and meeting them for a coffee and stuff. And it's all just about sort of getting to know your market really well. Like, for example, LinkedIn is just absolutely brilliant. Like, we target sort of marketing managers, because they're the ones who deal with sort of your social media and sort of your company appearance. And if you just connect with 50 of them on LinkedIn, you can then sort of understand what they like literally you can see what they like. But you can also then just open a dialogue with them, and be like, you don't want to go to them and immediately sell what you've got. You want to go and get to know them. I've been watching a lot of Jordan Belfort lately, who
Right.
I'm not sure if you know, but he's the sort of the main character of The Wolf of Wall Street, and obviously he's a real guy. And he honestly, he's so interesting. He tells so many interesting stories. And he's sort of he bangs the drum of, you got to get to know your client before you sell to them. And for as inexperienced as I am at that, it's a very interesting task. And as I said, I'm inexperienced, but the only way to get experience is by having a go at it. So at this time, it's very much just sort of getting to know our sort of our target audience and our market. But yeah, I just want to go and see people again, to be honest with you. That's what make it a lot easier.
Yeah. Well, I know that we've spoken in the past about the different sort of competitions that we run, and our end, we've got loads of plans with unique sports and handball and futsal and dodgeball, and we're looking to grow that side of the sport and engage as many children as possible when we are allowed back to play sport. So I'm sure that we'll be working together in the future at some point, which is going to be really good. But yeah, Ben, that's been really good. Really good. Thank you for that. It's been great to sort of get an overview of where you are at and your company is at, and obviously your business partners. Some great stories in there with Norwich, and that sounds like you, although you are in the middle of a lockdown, and we all are, that still sounds like you're motivated and passionate about everything that you're doing. A big thank you there, Ben. Thanks for your interview. I know that everybody at Norfolk Sport is really appreciative of your time. www.norfolkchampionships.co.uk to keep up to date with everything that we're doing. We really appreciate all of the following that we've got, everybody who views all the interviews on the news part of our website. Like I said, we really, really do appreciate it. Take care, guys. Keep safe, and look forward to the next interview.